Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're diving into the story of John Carver, one of the most recent villains. To carve his place among the great modern icons of horror is John Carver, also known as the Hatchet Killer or the Bloody Pilgrim. But hold on, this isn't your typical masked psychopath whose only motivation is cheap thrills and easy bloodshed. Carver is far more complex. He's the pure embodiment of vengeance, suppressed madness, and resentment pushed to almost inhuman limits. Within the narrative of Thanksgiving, he stands as the central antagonist, the dark core around which all the terror revolves. Behind his iconic pilgrim mask, there's no supernatural monster or demonic spirit. There's just an ordinary man whose life was shattered by personal tragedies, betrayals, and the insatiable greed of those around him. Wounded, broken, and consumed by endless pain, he takes on the name John Carver, evoking the historical pilgrim and founder of Plymouth, Massachusetts. With this new identity, he unleashes a meticulously planned wave of murders, taking revenge on everyone who, in one way or another, contributed to his downfall. Each act of violence is cold, calculated, and in its own twisted way, almost poetic. Carver doesn't just kill. He punishes, humiliates, and manipulates with surgical precision, turning himself into a true master of modern horror. The seemingly peaceful community of Plymouth soon becomes his personal hunting ground. The streets that once breathed calm are transformed into a maze of fear, and every resident becomes a potential piece in his macabre game board. His method isn't random. Carver studies his victims, understands their fears, and anticipates their moves. That's what makes horror fans regard him as one of the most memorable and terrifying killers of recent years. It's not the mask, the weapon, or even the blood that terrifies. It's his dark intelligence and his ability to turn each murder into a spectacle of psychological horror. Behind this character stands Eli Roth, the master of raw, visceral horror, known for films like Cabin Fever and Hostel. With Thanksgiving, Roth not only pays homage to the classic slashers of the 1980s, but also adds a modern twist. Grotesque, ironic, and deliciously sadistic. Every bloody scene, every scream, every shot is designed to make the viewer feel on edge, trembling between terror and fascination. In this video, we're going to explore every corner of John Carver's universe, from his origins and appearance to his complex psychology, deadly skills, and yes, even his vulnerabilities. Warning, warning. There will be spoilers, including the reveal of the killer's true identity. If you haven't seen the movie yet, pause now, enjoy it, and then come back to dive into this analysis. Ready? Let's go. To truly understand the real John Carver, we have to look beyond fiction and dive into the true story that inspired the legend. The real John Carver was one of the first pilgrims to settle in America and a founding father of historic Plymouth, Massachusetts. However, history was not kind to him. After his arrival, the community was struck by mysterious and devastating tragedies. More than 50 pilgrims died in inexplicable ways until Carver himself passed away. Strangely, after his death, the killings stopped. Some whispered that he had unleashed the calamity himself, a final judgment that only he could end. His body was buried with honors on Coles Hill, but nature had other plans. Violent storms unearthed his remains and scattered them throughout the town, leaving behind a trail of fear and superstition. It was said that his spirit never found peace, that his shadow still roamed the streets of Plymouth. Generations grew up with the legend of the founding father who never rested, and that ancient fear found a new face on Thanksgiving Day, 2022. It all began at Right Mart, the town's largest store, when its owner decided to launch Black Friday deals early. Crowds of desperate shoppers flooded the entrance, eager to grab the deal of the year. Among them was a group of young people, including Jessica Wright, the owner's daughter, who slipped in before everyone else. Within minutes, chaos erupted. Stampedes, screams, madness. 3 dead, dozens injured, and an entire town traumatized. Among the victims was Amanda Collins, a pregnant woman who only wanted to bring food to her husband. Her tragic death shattered Sheriff Eric Newton, who also knew that Amanda's baby probably wasn't his. The mix of rage, grief, and guilt broke him completely. Conventional justice wasn't enough. He needed revenge. That's when the new John Carver was born. Hiding behind the pilgrim's mask, Eric began a blood-soaked, meticulously orchestrated crusade. He spared no one. One by one, he eliminated everyone he deemed responsible, from the store owner to close friends and family members. With every murder, Eric sank deeper into darkness, transforming into something beyond human. He became a legend, a living myth. The vengeful pilgrim had returned to Plymouth, but this time, he wasn't a ghost. He was something far, far worse. A monster born from human tragedy, greed, pain, and rage. Among the possible targets of the mysterious killer were several faces that, at first glance, seemed harmless. People no one would ever suspect of causing such devastation. Yet, in one way or another, they had all contributed to the chaos of Black Friday. Among them was Manny, a security guard who, in the most critical moment, abandoned his post and fled, leaving the crowd in complete disorder. Then there was Lizzie, a compulsive shopper who, trapped in her obsession with hoarding products, lost all sense of reality, pushing, screaming, and dragging others down with her. Also on the list were Lon and his girlfriend Amy, 2 young troublemakers who, purely for fun, had incited the mob outside, mocking the guards and encouraging the crowd to storm the store. Each of them, through ignorance or selfishness, helped ignite the spark of the tragedy that scarred all of Plymouth. Every second of that madness was captured by a young man named Evan. With his phone, he recorded the screams, the shoving, the stampede, and the terrified faces of people running aimlessly. Those images, soon to go viral within hours, became the spark that fueled Eric Newton's rage. With the footage in hand, he was able to identify, with chilling clarity, nearly everyone directly or indirectly responsible for the catastrophe that took from him what he loved most. Every gesture, every glance caught in that video became a mark pointing to the guilty. Weeks before Thanksgiving Day, 2023, Newton began planning his crusade with terrifying precision. These weren't impulsive killings. He designed an intricate network of tunnels and a secret hideout beneath the historic John Carver house, a local museum dedicated to Plymouth's founder. There, in the shadows, surrounded by relics and echoes of the past, Eric slowly transformed into the legendary killer who would soon terrorize the entire town. The pilgrim's house became his macabre sanctuary, a place where the boundaries between history, obsession, and madness blurred into one. By coincidence or fate, the town was covered in John Carver masks, distributed as part of the local holiday festivities. This gave Newton a crucial advantage. He could blend into the crowd without drawing suspicion. Among dozens of identical masks, anyone could be John Carver. That simple fact multiplied the fear. People knew the killer could be standing right next to them, breathing the same air, and they'd never know. Consumed by his new identity, the sheriff launched his blood-soaked campaign just before Thanksgiving. His first act was to desecrate the Carver Museum. He stole the pilgrim's iconic axe and turned the historic house into his personal crime scene. The attack ruined a commercial that Thomas Wright, the owner of Wright Mart, had planned to film there, but for Newton, that didn't matter. Every act was a message, every act of destruction, a declaration of power. Soon after, social media began to fill with disturbing signs. Jessica Wright and her group started receiving cryptic posts signed by John Carver. Enigmatic messages, twisted photos, and macabre clues made it clear that the game had begun. The terror was no longer a distant threat. It was one message away, lurking behind the screen. The first victim was Lizzie, the aggressive shopper who had triggered the chaos in the store. Carver ambushed her at her restaurant after closing time, catching her by surprise in the kitchen. He first tried to drown her in the sink, her body thrashing against the strength of his rage. Then, pinning her against the freezer door, he finished her off with a clean strike from the stolen museum axe. Yet Lizzie showed terrifying resistance, tearing part of her own face off in a desperate attempt to escape. She stumbled out toward the parking lot, but Newton caught her with lethal precision, slamming into her with his stolen car and crushing her against a metal dumpster. As meticulous as ever, Newton collected the remains. He hung Lizzie's legs from the Right Mart sign and placed her torso on a grotesquely decorated table resembling a Thanksgiving feast. Then he tagged the young group again on social media, making it clear that this was only the beginning of his crusade. Every murder was a calculated spectacle, designed to sow fear and remind everyone that there was no escape. As the town's sheriff and lead investigator, Newton had total control. He could manipulate evidence, alter crime scenes, and approach his future victims under the guise of protector. Everyone trusted him, never realizing that the monster they feared was standing right before them. That same night, his twisted thirst for justice continued. His next target was Manny, the guard who had fled during the Right Mart chaos. Newton tracked him down to his apartment and attacked without mercy, first slicing open his abdomen with an electric knife, then, with cold surgical precision, severing his head. Before leaving, Newton performed a disturbingly human gesture. He fed Manny's cat and gently petted it, making it clear that his fury was reserved only for those who, in his warped mind, deserved punishment. Later, he placed Manny's severed head beside Lizzie's remains on the grotesque Thanksgiving table. Another social media post displayed the entire scene, tagging Jessica and her friends once again, with a warning they would be next. Desperate, Jessica decided to cooperate with the sheriff, unaware that she was handing the killer the key to his revenge. She gave him the Right Mart security footage her father had hidden away. Without realizing it, she had just provided the monster with the final piece of his bloody puzzle. It was then that the killer identified 3 new names for his already macabre blacklist: the impulsive Lonnie, his girlfriend Amy, and an older man named Leonard. Each of them, through their role in the Black Friday tragedy, carried a share of guilt that, for John Carver, fully justified their punishment. Every action, no matter how small, had contributed to the chaos, and now the scales of vengeance were ready to balance. On November 22nd, just one day before Thanksgiving, Carver activated the next phase of his plan. He found Lonnie at school, in a deserted and eerily silent hallway. The tension was palpable. The echo of footsteps resounded like a funeral drum. With blood-curdling brutality, he snapped Lonnie's neck with his bare hands, giving him no chance to defend himself. The death was instant, an act of pure, unfiltered violence. Shortly after, Amy, blissfully unaware, bouncing on a backyard trampoline, was struck by a sudden and deadly attack, a knife that ended her life within seconds, leaving her body motionless and her smile frozen in a moment of terror. Both corpses were taken to Carver's underground lair, a dark sanctuary where each macabre scene was arranged with the meticulousness of a ritual. Dim lights, tools neatly placed, and symbols only he could understand. Every detail told a story of vengeance. Every placement of the bodies carried a psychological purpose, designed to terrify the next witnesses. That same night, Carver also captured Evan, the young man who had recorded the massacre the previous year, along with his girlfriend Gabby. Taking advantage of the cancellation of the town's traditional Thanksgiving football game, he kidnapped them both and, with cold precision, used Gabby's phone as bait to lure Jessica right into his trap. There was no flaw in his strategy. Every move was calculated, every step carefully designed to maximize fear and chaos. Unaware of the danger, Jessica went to the school, believing her friend needed help. The empty hallways, dimly lit by the faint glow of emergency lamps, cast moving shadows that seemed almost alive. It was there that she came face to face with John Carver and his imposing axe. Terror struck instantly. Carver tried to kill her on the spot, but Jessica, reacting faster than even he expected, managed to escape by a hair's breadth, sprinting toward the police surrounding the building and leaving a trail of adrenaline and panic behind her. Meanwhile, the chaos in Plymouth only continued to escalate. Julia, another close friend of Jessica's, had been sent to Florida by her father in an attempt to protect her. But John Carver, always one step ahead, got there first. That night, he broke into the house before they could leave, quickly neutralized the security guard, and sedated Julia's father with a strong tranquilizer. His silence was absolute, his control complete. Then he turned to Julia, who at that very moment was on a video call with Jessica and her boyfriend Scuba. What followed was an act of cruelty bordering on ritual. Carver restrained Julia, turned ordinary kitchen utensils into tools of torture, and with chilling precision, pierced her eardrums. Her agonized screams echoed through the phone, while Jessica and Scuba, watching in horror, raced desperately to save her, powerless to react in time. The tension, fear, and despair reached their peak. The physical distance between them did nothing to dull the horror of witnessing every second of her torture in real time. When they arrived, they found Carver holding Julia, a knife pressed against her throat. To torment them further, he showed them a live video feed. Evan and Gabby were tied up at his grotesque Thanksgiving table, frozen with terror as the remains of previous victims decorated the scene in nightmarish fashion. In a final act of ritualized violence, Carver hurled Julia onto a table saw while her family was attempting repairs. The impact was devastating. Julia died brutally, her screams echoing as the climax of her terror, while Scuba stood paralyzed, unable to move as the horrific scene unfolded before him. By dawn on Thanksgiving Day, Eric Newton, once again disguised as John Carver, knew the police would be hunting him. With the cunning of a predator, he changed his disguise and blended into the town's Thanksgiving parade, now dressed as a clown, grotesque, ironic, and unnoticed, while his remaining victims, Thomas, Caitlin, Jessica, and Scuba, attended the event believing they were finally safe. During the parade, Newton struck with surgical precision. He decapitated the parade float driver, a Right Mart employee linked to Amanda's death, causing the man's head to roll down the street as the float crashed into the crowd, throwing the entire celebration into chaos. Amid smoke, screams, and the scent of panic, John Carver vanished once again, leaving the crowd and his victims disoriented and terrified. Thomas, Caitlin, Jessica, and Scuba tried to escape in a nearby police car, but the killer ambushed them, sedated them, and brought them to his underground lair, where the grand finale of his bloody ritual awaited. There, he tied them up and began his gruesome Thanksgiving dinner. First, he placed Caitlin, still alive, into an industrial oven, slowly roasting her before the others' eyes. Then, he arranged the bodies of his victims around the table, decorating the feast with grotesque precision. Every detail was a message, every placement a warning to those still alive. In an act of extreme psychological terror, he forced Evan to say what he was thankful for that year. When he refused, Carver beat him savagely with a meat tenderizer until he died, splattering blood and viscera across the room as the others watched in frozen horror. Finally, Carver completed his masterpiece by forcing Thomas Wright to eat a piece of his wife's leg, an act of humiliation, pain, and sheer horror that encapsulated the essence of his revenge. Thomas vomited, between sobs and convulsions, unable to comprehend the nightmare that had just unfolded, while John Carver amused himself with his macabre maneuvers, moving with the precision and calm of a predator who knows his territory. Jessica seized a fleeting moment of distraction. With a swift motion, she drew a tiny knife she had cleverly hidden inside her ring. Yes, straight out of a spy movie. Every second counted. Every breath could be her last. With that small yet lethal tool, she cut the ropes binding her, feeling the tension in her body blend with a mix of fear and pure adrenaline. Without hesitation, she turned to Scuba, freeing her companion as well. Both of them tried to escape through the dark hallways, but Carver, always one step ahead, wasn't the kind of man to give up easily. In a move almost impossible to predict, he managed to catch Scuba before he could reach safety, yanking him away from the exit and pinning him down with superhuman strength. Jessica, however, barely escaped. She sprinted through the corridors, gasping for breath, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she searched desperately for any hiding place that could offer protection. But the situation was far from over. Sheriff Eric Newlin, who until that moment had appeared to be her ally, decided it was time to put his twisted Plan B into motion. With diabolical precision, he made the entire town of Plymouth believe that the real killer was Bobby, Jessica's ex-boyfriend. To pull it off, he kidnapped Bobby, dressed him in the same clothes and mask as the killer, and staged the scene carefully to spread confusion and fear. The plan, however, didn't go as expected. Bobby regained consciousness sooner than planned, struck the sheriff with all his strength, and managed to hide in a nearby storage room, gasping for air as he tried to recover. It wasn't long before Jessica, driven by desperation, stumbled upon the sheriff unconscious on the floor. With a trembling yet determined voice, she told him what she had seen: her ex-boyfriend dressed like the killer, mask off, running away from the scene. Her eyes reflected a mixture of disbelief and terror as she described it. The sheriff, feigning surprise and stepping right back into his protector role, entered the storage room to capture the suspect and fired his gun theatrically. But Bobby escaped again, disappearing into the shadows of the building. Minutes later, Newlin returned to Jessica, eerily calm, and told her he needed an official statement. That's when Jessica noticed something that froze her blood. The sheriff's boots were covered in the same dirt she had seen on John Carver's. Everything clicked in an instant. Her mind pieced it together. The killer had been in front of her the whole time. Sheriff Eric Newlin was John Carver, with a mocking grin reflecting pure arrogance and delight in his victim's fear. Newlin decided to confess. He revealed his motives, his pain, and his twisted thirst for justice. He spoke of losing Amanda, of the guilt that consumed him, and how that anguish transformed him into an unrelenting hunter. But his arrogance, the very thing that made him feel invincible, betrayed him. Jessica showed him that everything was being recorded and broadcast live. Rage consumed him like a dark fire, turning him into an even more dangerous monster. He tried to kill her swiftly, but Bobby reappeared at the perfect moment, striking him hard and knocking him out for a few seconds. The relief didn't last long. Newlin got back up, faster and angrier than before, chasing Jessica and Bobby with terrifying determination. Finally, he cornered them, ready to finish them off. But Jessica's wit prevailed. With a quick move, she aimed an old blunderbuss at a parade balloon filled with flammable gas and fired. The explosion was monumental, engulfing everything in flames and smoke, an apocalyptic spectacle that seemed to mark the sheriff's end, though his body was never found, leaving behind the chilling suggestion that his return was still possible. Now let's talk about the villain, John Carver, or rather, Eric Newlin behind the mask. His appearance blends the historical with the grotesque. A dark industrial jumpsuit, heavy black boots that echoed ominously with every step, thick gloves, and a pilgrim-style hat. But what makes him unforgettable is his mask, a ghastly replica of the real John Carver's face, with rigid features and a disturbing smile reminiscent of V for Vendetta. When the mask becomes damaged or burned, it seems to twist and deform, growing even more grotesque and menacing, as if Carver's rage itself were alive beneath it. His weapon of choice is an old axe, a brutal symbol of power and dominance, though he also uses hammers, knives, or even silenced pistols. He prefers killing up close, savoring his victim's fear, making every murder a personal ritual, a blend of violence and psychological theater that cements his place as one of modern horror's most chilling monsters. Before becoming a monster, Eric Newlin was a respected sheriff, admired by his community, but the loss of his wife, Amanda, destroyed him from the inside out. The guilt and frustration twisted him into something else, a methodical, calculating killer driven by vengeance. Carver wasn't a reckless psychopath. He was intelligent, manipulative, and knew exactly how to use his authority to cover his tracks. Every murder was planned with surgical precision. He moved like an invisible predator, with inhuman strength and terrifying speed. Nothing seemed to stop him. However, he had one fatal flaw: arrogance. He truly believed no one could expose him. Until one victim, more clever than frightened, Jessica, managed to unmask him. And even though he escaped the flames and survived, the lingering thought that John Carver could return remained etched in everyone's mind. Finally, Eli Roth confirmed what fans had been hoping for. Sony Pictures has officially greenlit a sequel. The return of John Carver is set for next year, promising more blood, more suspense, and of course, more vengeance. Because as long as there's someone left to expose him, his shadow will always return, ready to continue his twisted game.